on this cold. When you say cold here in Michigan, you're talking about the winter wonderland, the water winter wonderland they call it. And this is one of the coldest days we've had. We've had I don't think we've had a respite for about 3 weeks now.
See, I was out there shoveling snow earlier, and I thought it was pretty warm, but I'm getting used to it. I mean,
Yeah,
but I'm just coming off a bad cold, so anyway.
I'm still trying to figure out why did I. This was 40 years ago when I came here, and I'm still trying to figure out what made me stay. Because that first when I was here was in '67. Was my first. I came here in '66, and February of that year, I never forget it. It was my first experience in having all the snow, being from the South, and in Birmingham, where I was raised, Birmingham, Alabama. You go outside in the wintertime around Christmas. You go out there in a short sleeve shirt, sun shining, and people out there with Christmas time that's skating. And we didn't have. I don't think I didn't see. Maybe I saw snow one time the whole time I was in Birmingham, but now we're talking about. I wonder what Al Gore would have to say about it. Now we're talking about what snowing in places I never saw snow before. Alabama. I mean, that's just something that you never imagined. I know one time they had a situation where they had to close the transport down, the public transportation down, because it was so unprepared for the weather, and they had no, you put chains around the tires, so we sliding all over the place, and so they didn't have that in place, and they could not operate the public transport without some liability, and so they shut the transport down. I remember that very distinctly, and it was just such a surprise to try to get through that weather. Nothing is nothing now, but at that time, just never saw it. And I came here right out of Tennessee. I had my first degree, and from the greatest school, the greatest. I don't want to say the greatest school the greatest college that I went to. I'm trying to think. Would that be? Your grounding point is really your greatest school. The one to teach you the fundamentals. And really, once they taught me to read, write, and count, all that happened in Birmingham. And once they did that, they pretty much could have turned me loose. I was the kind of person that liked to stay in the library. But in Alabama, in Birmingham, you just didn't prepare for this kind of weather. I like to know what they're doing down there right now, because I know in many parts of the South they just have to close down everything because they're not prepared for this kind of weather. And Al Gore, what do you have to say about it? You at this conference in Switzerland again in the Alps. I don't know if you took your skis there, but you up there, you were still there talking all these years later, and everything you put on the record about the weather, we are at fault, and the globe is warming, and it's our fault. We are adding to the carbon print on the earth, and we are causing global warming. So, okay, we go outside, the globe is warming, and you can't put on enough coats to go out there. I mean, it's amazing that this man was still speaking. Who wants to hear Al Gore? Al Gore, you had your day in the sun. We've had enough time between you stirring up all this hysteria about the weather, and we've had enough time between that hysteria that you created, and some time has passed to show the authenticity or the inauthenticity the inauthenticity of what you were talking about. And we can now evaluate the premise upon which you were, in fact, standing before the world and telling us calamity was on the way, because I think it was up to 1979 they were saying that the globe was in fact freezing. And then the change was that it wasn't freezing after all, that the globe was in fact warming. And so in 1979, I think the pivotal point was of them saying one and then saying the very opposite of it, was that year. And Al Gore, who was a failed, he wasn't a great student, by the way. I don't know why anybody would listen to the man, looking at the man, having gotten a glimpse of the man's academic record. That man wasn't, Gore was not a scholar, and he was not in this area that he's actually trying to be the expert in. And him coming out there and jumping in front of this wall that they have him in front of, saying that uh, the world was warming, the globe was warming, and it was our fault. We're the ones adding to it. I guess we're continuing to breathe, and we're breathing in carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide is affecting the temperature by not allowing the gases to escape into the atmosphere. Now, how you would do that is if you put it, as if you don't, as if you have some kind of a net. They don't have any respect for us, and so the air can't, the woman cannot escape into the atmosphere because somehow there's a roof apparently over the earth, and the air gets trapped, and it cannot go ahead and escape into the vastness of the universe. And this universe is so vast that if you took the fastest, I'm trying the speed of light, just take the traveling of the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, and try to compute how long will it take you to go through the vastness of the universe at that rate of speed. And it will take you, what, 100,000 years? And they're telling us that the air gets trapped in a universe that vast, and the universe is, in fact, at some point, we're going to have the ice melting, the polar caps are going to melt, and people are just going to drown if you're close to the coast. I would like to know if Al Gore has any property at the on it, like in Florida, on any of the shores.
All the other ones, like Obama's always talk about the global change, but they all have property on Martha's Vineyard. They have
Yeah.
property in Hawaii. So if they're so concerned about why they waste, okay, well, I guess they know they got more money coming where it comes from, so they can just waste property, the money for the property, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing that they would say that and then contradict that what they're saying by where they choose to have their habitat. Why would they, in fact, alarm us out here, and then they're doing things that show they're not even alarmed about it, because if they were, they would not be buying property right there where, if the calamity occurs, they're going to occur where they are first.
I legitimately believe that global warming is causing the rise of the oceans of the world. I'd be in the middle of Arizona or someplace in the desert,
Yeah.
like the Sahara. I mean, to be consistent, but they're not. They're never consistent. And like Al Gore made a big deal about the environment. He wants to put all these impositions on the tax-paying people and stuff. But his own house down there in Tennessee took $5,000. That was the current time. That was 20 some years ago. It was $5,000 a month utility bill.
Yeah, I read
$5,000. I don't pay that entire year. Do you?
You know what, John? The ones that are using a carbon footprint, if that were the problem, it's not the problem, but if it were the problem, then the ones that are trying to spread this hysteria about it, they're the ones who are the major violators of what they're claiming is the problem. And look at
They fly all over the world in private jets.
look at what they're doing as for the travel, and they're not going back commercial and sitting there with the passengers. They don't even fly in first class in commercial flights, where you can sit in the front where we back there eating chicken and they up there eating steak in the front of the airplane. I'll be doing that in May and all that. But they don't even travel where they can have the transport in the privileged sections of the airplane, because they don't want to be flying with the commoners, people like myself, and we don't have what status we have, and they don't want to be mixing up, going into airports and having to sit in these airports for hours and hours and hours. And I'm going to be going into Europe in May, and I'll have after I get into Brussels, I'll be staying in that airport 5 hours, just waiting for the connecting flights. And then every place that you hit down in, I'll be in eventually in Dakar. And when you get to Dakar, you got another hour, 2 hour layover, because in in Dakar they fly from Brussels to Dakar, and then when they get to Dakar, they clean the plane up. So that takes about an hour, and then they let the other persons who board for the last part of the flight, with the final destination being Banjul, and Banjul, which is Gambia, and then how they do the route. They go around and come back later on. It's the same route. These airplanes, these pilots fly the same route, so they are experts at the route that they're taking. But I'm telling you that they're not doing that. They're not going to go to. This is what I don't like about the ruling class. The ruling class does not want to live by the same rules that they require us rule by. They don't want to be taxed by the same rules. They don't want to have the same savings accounts, the same retirement programs, the same insurance. They don't want to do anything that the commoners do. We are the commoners down here. And they have this policy where they are, and then they have the policy where they are. Their policies are totally different. They're not going to do the things that they require us to do, and every time we catch on what they're doing and say, well, you're not following that policy, and then they change what they're saying, but it's never going to be where we all are put in the same mixing bowl, and we all supposed to, in fact, be treated equally under the law. They don't believe that, and they don't practice it.
But that's where I see law enforcement officers doing the same thing. They could speed, they could drive drunk, they can do everything they want that we're supposed to go to prison over. They avoid it. And I've seen it. Okay, so I'm not going to I'm not going to say, well, a faraway place. I've seen it personally here in Genesee County. So, I mean, it's caught drunk driving, they get away with it. I mean, their buddies cover for them. I mean, they're no different. That's the reason why they go into anybody who wants to go into politics basically is telling me they usually want to avoid living with the laws the rest of us live.
John, that's what I'm getting to. That's what I'm getting to understand. I wasn't getting that for a long time. And now I can't stop writing about it, because I was so flabbergasted when I found it out. I thought that they were out there trying to do the greatest good for the greatest number. And it was amazing to me when I found out that those guys are up there running their mouth and talking and doing all kinds of things about making us believe that they actually have buy-in to what they're talking about. And they don't believe any of that stuff. They don't believe that we are all equal under the law. They believe that some are more equal than others, and they are among those who are more equal than the others, and they are the ones above the others. And they don't believe in this equality they keep telling everybody else about. And their criticism, quite frankly, is catching up with them, because the American people, I know this in this case is what's going on. They don't believe them anymore. I came here to talk about Mark Levin's program last night. I am now fully convinced that this man is not on our side out here.
Well, a few weeks ago, he was at some conference. He's staying up speaking. I don't know if it's I can't remember it exactly, but I remember some video clip. I should have sent it to you. And he's saying, "You can have your podcast. You're going to have to come through us. We're not going to let you criticize Israel. It's like, we're not going to let you stop this. We will shut you down." I mean, he was like, "Well, we've already heard that kind of stuff." And I mean, you should have heard it. I mean, I'm enjoying a lot today. I'm sorry, but
I didn't hear that. But I tell you what I heard. I heard last night he was on a roll with that same voice you're talking about. He spoke in. He was speaking that voice for 20 minutes last night. He introduced his program, and the first 20 minutes of his program, this man was doing. It was unbelievable how he was. It's like you put you put two dogs down on the ground, and you rub their nose against each other, and once you put them down there and you have them pick up their own smell and put their scent on them like that, you are pitting them up against each other to fight. And last night, that was 20 minutes of that by Mark Levin. Mark Levin is trying to start a war between Israel. Well, really, it would be United States actually fighting the war. He's trying to fight the U.S. military. I guess he was just so infatuated with how easy it was for them to go in and extract out of Venezuela Maduro. And that extraction was that they thought they were prepared for it. They thought that if they put Maduro on the military base, they would have solidified his security, and it would be impossible to extract him out of the country. He's not going to be in his mansion. He's not going to be in his office and sleeping among his military on a military base. That you have protection that was there. Well, I go listen to what they said once the U.S. military arrived, and that's what Mark Levin is looking at and how easy it was. They knew that they knew at some point, given the belligerence that was taking place, and how they were putting all of the focus on this man has an indictment and it hasn't been served yet, and he's up there doing all these things here that are interfering with the national security of the United States, and he has got to be brought to justice and things like that. You knew that where they were heading with that, and they were very much aware of it over there, and they were prepared for it, they thought. But then I was listening to them after they had gone in there, and the technology they used in order to shut down all of the restraints that were in place that were intended to stop what they intended to do. And they were prepared for it, but they didn't understand what they were dealing with because they weren't ready for what they actually faced once that military operation was launched. They weren't prepared for this. They weren't prepared for the blackout, the disorientation in terms of the you know how you do those like you're in the concert and do strobe lights, and if you have a certain kind of condition, those strobe lights can affect your mind, and those you have to kind of warn people that the strobe lights are going to be used and things like that because it will set off certain neurological conditions, and they had all that on the table, and those that were talking about what happened in Venezuela in the aftermath of that invasion, that you should listen to what they were saying in the aftermath of that, because they were ready for them to come, but they weren't ready for them to come what they came with, because what they came with was something they had never seen before. The technology this country actually has just kind of throws a monkey wrench in this idea. Really, it throws a monkey wrench in the foreign policy of the United States, because there's no in the world, any country that's sane. None of them are sane, but they're saying enough to know they don't want to get barbecued in what they are creating for the people. They're doing that to create a situation for others. They don't plan for themselves to stand behind it and to stand in front of it in the middle of it. They plan to escape it. And if there's no escape, you have the kind of warfare that if they actually ignite this war with all these players that have these instruments of warfare on the same level, um, they're not so much trying to get that going um, because there's no way they can escape it. Now I noticed last night, and when Mark Levin was talking about uh, Iran, he kept on making an equivalence, between Iran and North Korea. His idea was to tell his viewers that we don't need a North Korea in the Middle East. And if we don't, in fact, take this opportunity, see, he didn't mention anything about the national security of the United States. He didn't admit that was not even something that he brought up. It'd be hard to sell that now because we saw what happened. We saw what happened in the extraction of Maduro. That was a military base. They went in there and didn't lose a single soldier in that operation. And those guys, they were saying it once that operation was over. They were saying, "Do you think that there are any countries that are able to go against the United States with the weaponry that you saw being used in the extraction campaign in Venezuela? Do you think there was anyone that can stand up next to what you saw?" And those guys were saying, "We don't recommend anything that would stand up, that would try to stand up to what we saw because we were prepared for it and were unable, knowing it was coming. But once it came, we were totally unprepared for it." They said they were even unable to do anything defensively. They shut down everything, and then the disorientation of the soldiers and things of that sort. It wasn't like none of them actually died on the other side. They were dying like flies on the other side. But they weren't able to respond to it because they came with some things that they didn't think that we had. And that was decisive to the point where they went there with overwhelming technology and technological force that set down Venezuela. But that force that they unleashed shows that they could set down any military on the planet right now. There's some sophisticated militaries on the planet, don't get me wrong about that. But this military is the most sophisticated military that's on the planet right now, and that's what Mark Levin sees. And he was saying last night on his program, I kept listening to him, waiting for him to kind of get into his voice a little bit more. What is he advocating? Come on out and tell us what you're advocating here, because we want to hear something about our national security being at stake here. You can't just tell us to go and start fighting because it benefits, in this case here, and this is what it really was amounted to. He was talking about it benefits Israel, but that was the onus of everything he was talking about, is how it would affect the Israeli state. And he was saying that, and I couldn't believe he came out explicitly and stated that Iran is the weakest that has ever been and as it will ever be, and that creates an opportunity. So the opportunity that is created by the people being out in the street, and they're out in the street in Massachusetts. So if you're talking about people being in the street, look in Los Angeles. You know, we talking about them being in the streets in Tehran, yeah, they are. But they're in the streets here in America too. And I gain a little bit of respect because you know how I feel about these politicians. But I gain a little bit of respect for the great senator from Kentucky. I thought I have to give him a lot of I don't like to give credit to these politicians. I don't think they deserve it. But he was asking that this question he was asking to Secretary of State. I thought he was asking some very good questions. If you had this country under seizure under the same conditions in which it was in fact advocated to do what was done in Venezuela, would that be considered at that point in time an act of war? Fair question.
By the way, I was interject here. I don't want to interrupt, but don't forget your point. But I found where it was at. I was at the Republican Jewish Coalition. It's the meeting, not meeting, but he stood up at this podium, and it's on Forbes. But I'm going to try to give you the. I'll send you the link, and then I'll post it. Yeah, he just goes off. He goes after Nick Fuentes. He goes after Candace Owens. Oh, we're not sure you have your podcast. You think you're going to change the world? Well, you're going to have to go through people like me. You know, millions of us. You know, just like that voice. I could do his voice really well.
Really? Yeah.
I can't stand that man.
What day was that again?
Oh God, this was 3 months ago.
3 months ago.
Yeah, this is 3 months ago. Yeah, it's like it's Forbes breaking news. That's several places. That's one of the several places I've seen it at.
I missed it.
Yeah, but I said Forbes because it's kind of neutral. It's not known to be anti-Semitic or whatever. Yeah, but yeah, he was just going off. We're not going to let you have your say. We're going to shut you down. You're going to have to go through millions of people like me. Yeah, like you know how he does that. I mean, that when I heard that, I said, this guy's unhinged. He can't justify. You can't, and unless he wants to suit up and join the IDF, he should shut the hell up himself.
Well, he was on Unhinged last night, and it was just unbelievable. The first 20 minutes, it was just going up and down. The war drums were being beat for 20 minutes. The man was actually talking about why the United States needs to take advantage of this opportunity to attack the leadership. And he was saying that he was not talking about diplomacy. He's not talking about a diplomatic solution. He's talking about a military solution to what he sees as the problem with those mullahs. That this is an opportune time to go at them because there are people in the street and they're at the weakest point they've ever been, and they will never be at a weaker point. Now, this is according to how he sees it. Excuse me. That he can see where there'll be a weaker point in the future, and now is the time to strike out against those mullahs in Iran and take them out as if that is our fight. And they didn't talk about anything to do with the national security of the United States. Because if it had anything to do with the national security of the United States, then, of course, that case has to be made. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. That case has to be made as to how that affects this country. We don't want our military being used as the policeman of the world. We want our military to be put there. The taxpayers pay for it. And we pay for it because we want to be protected as a nation and have our national security interests on the top rung of the ladder, so to speak. And we want to have this country's military employed in this country's defense.
I'm going to bring up something too. Back when it was 1979, 1880, or whatever, around the time when the hostage situation developed in Iran because they seized their hostages, the American hostages. And I didn't like that. Hated the stuff like that. But they held them for how long? They weren't raped. They weren't beaten to death. They weren't tortured. They were treated pretty well, okay? That showed restraint on them. That shows to me that I mean, I think what would we do if somebody else grabbed I for what right now I'd welcome Trump being seized. I think almost. I'm just joking, but I mean, serious. I mean, it's like no, I mean he's just going off the. I mean, but he's going to be dissuaded by that. And another thing is going back to Mark Levin. I mean, he's going after people who are using the things that we're supposed to do to protest what they think is the government missteps, and he's demonizing them, and he's screaming at them, and he's belittling them. And these are not like people like what we're doing. They're like not. These people are making big bucks off of what they're doing. So obviously resonate with people. So he's trying to weaponize the government to go against these people who are opposing our government actions, which we're supposed to be allowed to do under the First Amendment.
John, I'm appalled at how this is going across the stream, and it's not being challenged, and we are taking it as if that is the way the country feels. We don't want all this intervention that's taking place. We don't even have a chance to vote on it, and they act like the foreign policy is a foreign policy of the American people.
And if we do object to it, they're just going to try to shut us down. I mean, it's like, what? Then why do we have the First Amendment for?
Yeah.
Why? And he hates it. And another thing, they had a guy speaking. He was from Israel, so he's not an American. But he's saying just a couple of weeks ago said we should maybe look at the First Amendment and reining that in. You know, this is the guy who was like he's supposed to be a tech giant there over in that. God, his name is Shlomo something. Shlomo, yeah, Shlomo. I'll see if I can find. Yeah, he said that. Yeah, we basically. So we have to stop it or like control it to preserve it. That's what he said. This is a foreigner. He's from Israel saying this about the American First Amendment, and Trump's administration is going to listen to that people like him over our own people.
Wow, John, I can't believe that we'll listen to people like Ilhan Omar. And I think it's time for us to look seriously at these people. Go back and look at this naturalization process that we have here, because if they were naturalized as she was under false pretenses, if that affidavit that you're involved in submitting for citizenship, if there's falsity involved in this country, if it's serious, and I don't think it is serious, it's certainly not serious enough. Not about not about its borders. Certainly not about its sovereignty. I can't believe this country would if it was. In fact, I know if it was serious, you would not be looking at Ilhan Omar's naturalization, because look what she did on the pathway to becoming a citizen of the United States from Somalia. Look at what Somalia is doing. All those Somalians are doing that are in this country right now. What are they in the country doing that's adding to the country, the quality of life of the country? What are they doing here?
Well, look at the fact that somebody had to try and show them what the law was so they could skirt around it, to find the loopholes and the ways to like just hedge around it. They had to somebody on the. I'm saying probably Democrats, because that's who's and we're talking about
That's
the
what I'm talking
Democrats.
about.
And so they had to have Democratic help they know the law. I don't think these Somalians came over here and knew the law. Okay, they knew how to but they knew they could probably get some sympathy. They could probably get some aid, and then these people told them how to really, really clean up on that.
Yeah, they did, John. This was all contrived. All this was part of what happened in 2020. That's why they had to get Trump out of there. Trump was president in 2016, and that was not intended. They didn't intend for this man to come from nowhere and become the president of the United States and stop what they had in mind. These things were planned a long time ago. And he came in there and out of the clear blue ran as ran really. I wrote an article about it today. We should have more people running as what he ran as, because Donald Trump ran as a narcissist. He didn't run as a Republican or a Democrat or a politician.
I like that. I like that. Well, he is. He is. Well, that's not debatable. No,
the man wants to be liked, and we need and because they have a need to be liked and want to be liked, that's what drives him. He wants to do things that will get the applause and get him to be admired, and he wants to be up there on Mount Rushmore.
I voted for him 3 times, and you voted for him. You traveled to just see how him
Every
different.
way it went.
Yeah, so I mean, we are. See, thing is, here's the difference between us, you and I, and
Mhm.
people like us and the Democratic Party. We see faults and flaws in our people that we back because we feel embarrassment or possible embarrassment. The
Yeah,
Democrats don't have that issue.
yeah, John. He's not uh, Trump is not a perfect candidate, and there's no such and it's trying to pretend otherwise about that. He's the best that we have right now in the political arena because some things have got to be stopped. We got to stop and shut down the stuff that's going on in Massachusetts and what's going on in Minnesota, what's going on in California, Chicago, um, uh, Freezer over in Illinois. That's got to be shut down. Johnson in Chicago. These people's got to be shut down. I'm glad he's taking on these pariah cities. They talking about these. They're gonna call these cities uh, cities that you can have defying the laws of the country, the immigration laws of the country, and you can actually put people in these cities and then have sanctuaries against the laws of the United States. Where's that coming from? Where's that? What document are they talking about? Where you can defy the states can defy the federal law, which means they're in defiance of the Constitution because Article 6 of the Constitution sets up the primary, the way that the law is set up, the hierarchy of the law, and state law is subordinate to the federal law.
Was immigration law established? Yeah, immigration essentially was established under when we first started, when we first started rolling as a country, right?
Yes, yeah, because we had immigration at the very beginning. They had to make sure that the ones that were could run for president, if you notice in Article 2, they had to make a special um, uh, there's a special statement in the Constitution that allows for the persons that were not born in the United States at the time the Constitution was being ratified. It allowed for a way in which to make them eligible for the presidency because they weren't born. George Washington wasn't born on American soil. George Washington was born on British soil. So if you read the Constitution carefully, you'll see where there's an addendum in the Constitution that allowed for that. They were already aware of some of the peculiarities in the process, and they had certain caveats built into the foundation of the country. I understand that, and they should have done that. George Washington was eligible because of that caveat they put in there. They made him eligible because only natural-born citizens can be president of the United States. Those that are naturalized in the United States are not eligible to be president of the United States. And really, that's I heard Franklin Graham. He did a very good job of saying that we need to have that as a controlling factor in all elected national offices in the United States. If you are for a national office of this country, it would take an amendment to do it. But every office on the national level should require be where you should be required to be a natural born citizen, as it is required for the president of the United States, and for the same reason. You want loyalty at the highest parts of the structure of your government. You can't have dual loyalties at the highest levels of your power center, and you can't have people in your government where they have loyalties that are not absolute in terms of what they're backing. They must back the sovereign United States. You don't have anybody that are really for this country talking about sanctuary cities and sanctuary states.
Well, did you hear Mark? Did you hear Lindsey Graham right after the hurricane hit North Carolina? He's from South Carolina, the senator from there, right?
I know.
So they're asking about aid to the North Carolina people in North Carolina who suffered through the hurricane, right? He said, well, blah, blah, dismissive as hell about it. And then he goes, actually says this, but our friends in Israel really got, we got people trying to kill them. So I mean, the hurricane killed people, it took out their land, and this is a state next to his state. So I mean, it just shows you where the loyalties are. You're bringing up loyalties, okay? I mean, it's like we don't have a senator or a congressman or even loyal to the people they're supposed to be representing.
Yeah, they got that's another problem we got in our Congress. Our government is really split. If they were there as Trump has America first, right? If they were there as America first politicians, if that were the case, why aren't they part of the MAGA? Why is it not only okay? Fine, they're not going to be part of MAGA. Why are they opposed to it then? MAGA is Make America Great Again. What's wrong with that? And who can be against that overtly and come out and say they're not in favor of that? Well, they don't come out and say they're not in favor of it. What they do is they oppose MAGA without saying, why are you opposed to it? Why would you be opposed to the group that's set up by its name says is there to make America great again? I bet you this. I can say this without any equivocation. They're not going to say they to make America great again, and then at that moment be on the same side with what Donald Trump is talking about, because they're not going to do that. If Donald Trump says one thing, they're going to say the opposite, no matter what the effect is on the country. This country is shut down partially right now, and how many times they shut it down during the time that Trump has been president in his first term, and now into the second year of his second term? How many times has the government set down in that period of time? And they keep on because they want to stop MAGA. But why would you want to stop MAGA if MAGA is just trying to make the country great again? Shouldn't we all be on that page? If you don't like the man, that's one thing. But then this is not just about the man, because when the man wasn't running, they had no problem with him. On all the talk shows, even on the liberal programs, Donald Trump was on The View. And they weren't trying to jack him up at that time before he began to announce political interests and so on. And then after the interest was announced, he then runs in the Republican Party. That was a no-no. But look at what was going on prior to that and how they treated him when he got on those programs. They were not there interrogating him and making it difficult for him to be heard or get his points across and things of that sort. They didn't know that he would throw his hat in the ring until he came down the escalator. And we came down the escalator at Trump Tower. I think it was June the 15th. Or it was certainly in June. I might be wrong about the date, but it's June of 2015. And I'll tell you, until he came down that escalator to make that announcement, before that, look at how he was received everywhere he went. He was a celebrity. You were asking him, why wouldn't he run? And just assume that he would run as a Democrat. Or at least as a liberal, but no, at that point as a liberal Democrat. And they were practically asking him, given that they had sensed that he has something unusual in terms of skill level. He's not on the same level as these politicians are. All they are just people that were able to act as salesmen, and they were able to get in the trenches and convince more people to vote for them than vote for somebody else. Sometimes they'll do what Lisa Murkowski does in Alaska, and what she does is that she makes sure that the vote that goes on in the primary, the top vote getters in the primary, whatever party they're in, they can then be part of the general election, and that would keep. And what she's doing is keeping the vote divided so that it can be dispersed. And that's how she kind of gets her licks in every 6 years, and she doesn't have any. They're tired of her there, but she's very she's able to finesse the vote and get in there every 6 years, and she's been doing for a while because of how they manipulate the vote. They got a fight. You may be aware of this. They have a fight going on right now in New York. New York only had one person that was in the uh, in the national government from that state, and they now have gerrymandered that one district out of there, and is in court, and we'll see how it comes out. But what they're doing now, they want they don't think they may not be able to win the election in the midterm because Donald Trump, unbeknownst what they're trying to say out here in public, that he's gotten all this loss of support, and he's lost his party, and his party not supporting him now, and so on and so forth. CNN poured water on that parade this past week by showing that the man in his own party had 87% some time ago. In a recent poll they took, he got 87% of the people in his party behind him right now. That doesn't sound like any erosion of support to me. It means the numbers are consistent in terms of the support the man has in his own party, and has a sizable part of the independents who like what the man is doing, because the man really is driven to do a good job. People should be celebrating this. That's how I wrote about that today in my post, that what they should be doing for Donald Trump is sending the man. You want to send the man here? The man's a multi-billionaire, probably about $7 billion, $7 billion, and he's a multi-billionaire, so he has everything he wants for his material. He wants to send him a thing, send him a mirror with his picture on it, and yeah, and let it, and then a card thanking him for the job he's doing, because the man is doing a good job. But he's doing a good job because I said in my post today, we've been electing politicians to the office. You know, should have been doing. We should have been electing narcissists to the job, because they're bound because they're bound to operate based on different dramas. They're not these politicians. Their drum beat is very what they march to. Their drum beat is very different.
You're striking on something that's pretty interesting if you want to look at it. See, I always considered anybody going to politics had to be kind of driven by narcissism to some degree. But basically, the idea of going there as a public servant and serving the public, you have to have somebody who has to have a shred of like let's see, Machiavellian approach to things. You know, you got to know how to manipulate people. So if you get a nice, Jimmy Carter was a good example. Okay, he was a nice guy, terrible president, but nice guy.
Yeah.
All right. So he was like, he had some ego. You have to go enter any field where you're going to be in the public eye. You're going to have a sense of ego that can withstand attacks. Okay, and he did. But if you're going in there with the idea of a public servant, meek and mild, how far can you really go? Yeah. I mean, the only person I could see that actually did that, had some degree of that, would have been Ron Paul. And he definitely, and he had a constituency, kept him in power for years, kept the position. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. That's the reason why he had a track record they could point to. He didn't do wild extremes on his behaviors, but he was probably the least narcissistic and least maniacal, Machiavellian. He realized the possibilities for it. He was a Christian, I think, in the viewpoint that he was he knew he was as meek as he was a sheep, a lamb, but knew about, he could speak he knew think like a serpent. You know, he knew how to do that. But it's awfully hard to have that mix in politics.
Yeah, Paul is cut out. That's a different. That man is a very different politician. I consider him to be see, they're not. We talk about politicians. We very seldom see them and define them as statesmen. Ron Paul was a politician, statesman, and he was driven by different. The drum beat that he was marching by was very different. He was not ever embraced in Washington. I was surprised he stayed as long as he did, because it's hard to stay up there with any kind of conviction, and you're inside of the uh, uh, a den of vipers, like that, because that's what Congress is a den of vipers. And he stayed there a long time, longer than I thought he would stay, because it was hard for him to stay there, because a man is a man of principle. His son from Kentucky, I was amazed at his questioning of Marco Rubio. He was right on point. If what had happened in Venezuela happened in this country here, would that be an act of war? And they had Rubio hard and Hien trying to get around the question, because it was a legitimate question to raise. This is an act of war.
The season of the president from it definitely
Venezuela.
is. Yeah, Venezuela. Yeah, I mean that's definitely. I mean, yeah, because there's so many countries they're eyeing now. Now he wants to. Now they're looking at Cuba. Now they want to do something with Cuba. Well, they should have done that years
Boy,
ago. But
they saw Mark Levine saw this military apparatus they put out there. They got some stuff for him now. Donald Trump rebuilt that military to the point where it is second to none on the planet. There's no military that can stand next to this military that we have here. We are a first world country militarily. In all the other areas, we are third world. But we're first world in terms of the military apparatus, and that's what has been shown. And Donald Trump has had to take a lot of credit for that. But this man is they want this man to flex his muscle. Mark Levine was crying pretty much about for that last night. He wants to turn that military loose. They've been watching what was going on when they went into Iran to stop that nuclear development, and how they were able to precision go in there with the precise target, one after the other, where they were focusing in on a target, and they were doing it with multiple missiles going into that target simultaneously, without those planes colliding and without anybody being injured by by friendly fire, so to speak. I mean, that this apparatus they put in place, they've not seen anything like it, and there's nothing like it right now in any of these other arsenals. This military force is something else, and they're salivating. I think Mark Levine was salivating last night. He was salivating over it. This man was beating the drums. He wants to have this military unleashed, and he wants it unleashed to pretend that the interest is that we have got to take those mullahs down. We never talk about our security in the state, because those mullahs are not crazy.
okay, I got to suggest that. I'm sorry to interrupt so many times.
No, that's all right.
But people understand. See, we're if we go a full tilt, do everything Israel wants. Now we got all these people in other countries because they want us to move in. They might want to make moves in Syria, Iran, and Iraq. They're going to want. They're agitating for us to do a regime change for them in Iran. Okay, so they're going to have people disaffected by that, during the conflict. So they're going to we're going to be under pressure by humanitarian groups to bring people into this country. Now you got people who are. They are not. We've seen the Muslim community here are not sitting passively by taking jobs, they're low-paying jobs. They're getting immediately involved in our political sphere. We've had how many? 3 already elected to our Congress?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so guess what? Now we're bringing people over here with the idea to get involved in politics, and they're going to have the funding because they already got the people on the ground to do that here. So guess what? It's not really good in Israel's interest to keep on doing the wholesale willy-nilly and keep pushing the people over here, because guess what? If they want to continue support from the United States, that's going to erode as the population gets going to be more questioning of that.
Yeah, John, they had I read one report where there were 72 persons that ran. They were not born here, ran for office, and of that 72 that ran, 42 of them, around that number, actually were able to win elective office. We are electing foreigners, basically foreigners, into our government right now. And that is what was predicted when Ayn Rand was talking about some of that back in the day, how this country is going to fall. It's not going to fall by somebody coming from the outside and invading the country. We're too strong for that. But what they're doing is taking over the country. The country is being eroded from within, and people who are not committed, certainly not committed to MAGA, but are not committed to the country. I mean, it's amazing how many persons in Congress right now who are, they're not going to come out and say they're opposed to it, but look at how they respond to it.
But don't see how continuous warfare makes us great. And that's what I mean. That's what Mark Levin, or like Dean. I don't know his name, how he pronounces it. But I mean, I don't know how that's going to encourage. I mean, he's slaughtering allowing your population to die off in wars. That's making it great?
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, John, that's another part of the strategy, to weaken the country by keeping it always at war with the world. And some of them are falling over in this place, and some over in that particular place. I really don't see how they could be talking about giving a Nobel Peace Prize to anyone in this country. Not anywhere close to what is happening in Ukraine.
Okay, I'll bring this up too, though. Okay, what was the traditional role of the military? To keep people from coming into your borders, right?
Right.
We don't do that. We go to other people to engage and fight for them, or allegedly that's how the smokescreen we use, right?
We're the worst ones at it.
But our military is not here to protect our own borders and our own, the coast around our. We should have that ringed. That's where our Navy should be at, is around the outs, within a few mile limits of the 5 mile limit or whatever. That's where they should be at, around our airspace, on the ground, here in the United States, not all over the world fighting everybody else's battles for them.
Yeah, John, that would be that's the thing that makes sense, and the thing they're doing doesn't make any sense.
Dude, if we spend money on the military, at least the money we spend on the military would be bouncing around our economy.
Yeah.
Over there, it's going to other countries, and they're building projects that we don't have oversight on. They put civilian people in contracts out there over from that country. That's where a large portion of that money is being invested, along with weapons, along with technologies, being filtered into the hands of people who are later on going to have to oppose.
John, if they don't have, if you're not using your military to secure your own borders, which is to say to secure your own national interests, because you don't have borders, you don't have national interests, and you don't have borders. You got to have national borders. You got to have recognized borders, and person have to recognize they can't cross over here and can't cross over there, because those borders are in fact out of limits, and you can't come across those borders without the permission of the receiving country. That's how it operates. I don't think anybody does it any better than Victor Urban over there in Hungary. Hungary doesn't have any of the anybody in the country that shouldn't be there. They understand that they're going to be a country for the Hungarian people. They're very clear about that, and what is interesting about it, as Europe is collapsing from within, because you got stupid people running Europe. Some of the worst politicians on the planet right now are in Europe.
Did you hear where the Austrian guy actually wants Austrian women to all Austrian women to wear the burqa?
Wow, John, that's what's going on in Europe, and it's Jonah Goldberg's book. That book needs to be read. It was written some years ago, but that book is very, very much right now on time. People need to read that book. It's called America Alone. It's got a big map, a big globe there, and it's got all these different flags surrounding the United States, and the book is titled America Alone, because he's saying that what is happening is that they are surrounding. This country is being surrounded as they're picking off one country in the West after another, and they're telling me I was there once, but I haven't been there in a while. But they're telling me you go into London, and they're saying that you can't even tell the difference between London and the Middle East. I forget how many mosques they say are there now, but they're saying that just the call to prayer in London does not uh, allow you to think that you're in a West. You think you're in the Middle East, and there's some parts of this country like that as well. You can go out to Dearborn. They tell me I remember going when I was at Michigan State and doing some workshops there that the people I didn't see what was going on in the background at that point, but I began to notice that the funding was coming out of Saudi Arabia, and they are just inching further and further along the way of the takeover. This is a takeover of what we're looking at right now. But they are really making an encroachment in the United States, and they intend to have this takeover. But you cannot do it overnight. You have to just what they're doing incrementally, so that one day you just wake up and then there's a call to prayer in your city, and that's what's going on, and that is, how do you reverse that? How do you reverse what Ihan Omar? They naturalized this woman as a citizen of this country. This woman hates this country, and how do you reverse that? You can do it, but I'm talking about politicians now. We're talking about politicians do that, which is in fact uh, not going to shake their tree, their political tree, and get them to fall out of the tree, and uh, they're not going to do anything to upset the apple cart. So how do you do that under political terms that politicians operate with? They don't operate in the terms you and I operate. They operate politically, and if there is a problem between their interests and the interests of the country comes in second. So I'm just watching these developments, and I can tell you that right now we are this country is under siege. We don't have time, Mark Levine, to be uh, having you give us these diversionary calls to arms. Uh, Tyron, I didn't hear anything last night in that discussion, at least about Tyron being a national security threat to the United States. Because what threat are they posing to the United States? We are, in fact, not having our security opposed by Tehran. Tehran now is, in fact, uh, coming unglued and is weakening itself from its own turf. And because of that division, they have got to put a lot of their time now in terms of putting to concretize their own nation, because that nation is being split apart. And what they're calling for, Mark Levine was doing last night, what he's calling for is to take an opportunity to go in there and do them in under these conditions here. I thought that was very, very, very vulgar, very, very dangerous to play good cop, bad cop, because what's happening in Tehran right now is weakening the nation. And the question is, what does that have to do with our security? What's happening over there? Why is that our fight in Tehran? But he was making it our fight. It's going to be, if we don't stop them now, they're going to do what North Korea did, and we're going to have North Korea in the Middle East. And if we have North Korea in the Middle East, what does that do with the national security of the United States, if you have uh, North Korea and you have a similar situation of North Korea and in the Middle East, why would that be a threat? Because I can tell you right now, North Korea is not going to be Islamic. You're not going to have an Islamic state if it's going to be mimicking North Korea. What religion do you think they're going to allow in North Korea, where they're going to be wearing those burqas? Go and look and see who's over there wearing those burqas in North Korea. Go and look at North Korea. Look at how the people over there already have their dear leader. They're not going to be putting anything above Kim Jong Un. Go in those classrooms and see if you see anybody looking like those mullahs in Tehran in North Korea. What picture do you think they're putting in front of the public there? And they're trying to act like that would be somehow a proliferation of the mullahs. He kept bringing up North Korea last night, and as if Kim Jong Un is posing a threat to the United States. I already you already knew that Kim Jong Un was not going to be making the deal that Trump was trying to make with him, because if he did that, he opens himself up to a coup d'état in North Korea, because the military and the nuclear weaponry of the military is what keeps the other interests off of Kim Jong Un. That if he in fact got rid of his if he got rid of the nuclear weapons, he will weaken his own power base, and he's not going to do that. We can tell him about he's going to create a paradise over there in that land, since it has all the shoreland off the coast of the waters over there and so on, and try to sell that as we're going to make this a paradise if you give up your weapons. And Kim Jong-un was never going to go along with that. And the military would have been just chomping at the bits if he did that, because they would be going after him under the umbrella that's not popular in North Korea, and they would be able to move on him under the popular uprising that would have created in North Korea. He's not going to do that. I don't know who thought up that scheme, but they kept telling North Korea we're going to have with Iran, we're going to create a North Korea in the Middle East. And what does that even mean? A North Korea in the Middle East. Well, somebody tell me, how could you create a North Korea in the Middle East? I want Mark Levin to explain that. How can you put a North Korea in the Middle East where you have another image? It has nothing to do with Islam, nothing to do with Allah, nothing to do with the Quran. How are you going to put that in the Middle East? And I have been in countries where they have different versions of the of Islam. But when I go into those countries, and I've been in a number of them, and I just I don't not all of them are pushing the envelope like they're doing in some of those countries, but they are very much with 92%. I think in one country, I won't call the name out of the country, but in one country, I think 92% of the people are Muslims. Another country I've been in, there's a very peaceful practice of Islam, but 96% of the people in one country are Muslims. You're not putting no North Korea They don't even. I don't even see how you can even have a discussion about that. They're not putting no North Korea, Mark Levine in no area where Islam has its foothold. How would that even look? But this idea was the threat. They got to imply a threat. Now, if they come out and said there is a threat, and then we saw what they did in Venezuela, what they did in already have done in Iran. Boy, what they did there was something that they kept looking for them to come in that direction there, and they did a couple of miscues and misdirectional things that they did, and before they knew it, here were these planes there on site, on target, under the radar, shutting down some of the systems, defense systems, and flew underneath the radar of those systems and did those pinpointed strikes. And they may deploy what they had and put in place again in the future, but that was a big setback with what they did over there. And they are, and they're still chopping at trying to figure out what it was that they used against them. They were surprised that they had this weaponry. They hadn't advertised this, and there's some weapons. They're selling some of the weapons that we have to other parts of the world, but there's some weapons that I heard there were about 4 or 5 different weapon systems that they developed that they're not going to allow other countries to have, because then they'll be pinpoint on the same level of the military, given that they have the same apparatus that we have. They're not willing to give them that advantage, and that it would be crazy if they did. We're spending what was that statistic I read? They're spending on the national defense in this country here. They can call it defense, but they finally got honest, and they're calling it secretary. They're not calling Secretary of Defense anymore. They call it Secretary of War. That's a War Department.
The Department of War, yeah. War Department, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Department of War. They're not. Who's going to attack the United States directly? You talk about 911 and all that. 911, yeah, 911 was using your own missiles, your own airplanes, hijack the planes from inside the United States. If they had hijacked one plane, if one plane had come out of a foreign country and flew into this space of this country from that country, boy, they would have had more than hell to pay. They're not going to do that, because countries are sitting targets. The governments don't just they're sitting in a certain place and then they can do what they want to do and not be sitting there. They're sitting there as a target, and then that's not how this thing would be fought. They have to if you're gonna what happened 911 is that they're using the missiles inside the country to attack the country. Those 4 airplanes, those 19 people on those planes hijacked American planes on the soil of the United States. Now, we can say they're all from this place and so on and so forth. Yeah, you can say that, but the attack, you can't say the attack came because of that place. The attack came because those attackers came and were inside of this country, got trained in this country. Somebody should have been surprised should have been surprised that they be taking pilot's classes and not trying to find how to land the planes. They weren't interested in landing the planes. They were interested in how to fly the planes. They weren't trying to find out how you land them. That should have, if we weren't so diverted, that would have raised a red flag right there. Why are 19 persons interested in learning how to fly and not interested in how to land? You want to fly a plane and land the plane is not important? and they weren't gonna, that one plane, the one that they took down in Pennsylvania, it was headed to the White House. And when that guy was saying "let's roll," they realized that that plane did not intend to land. They didn't have no land. What skills were there on that plane to land any of those planes? Those planes not intended to land. And we have people who are inside this country right now who came in here during the Biden administration. They're in this country right now looking for the next opportunity to, in fact, rise up and create the havoc that they created on 911, because that which was put in place over the last 4 years, I mean, they went over there and why would they do this? They went over there and picked people up on our airplanes and brought them into the country. Why would they do that? Don't be talking about Biden did that. Biden didn't do any of that. It was done under Biden's name on Biden's watch, but this was done by that committee that finessed the election in 2020. And that's why they did it. The reason why they set up the terms in which Trump had to go, and they set him up so that he would go, is because they had plans in place to do that which they did once the election was in fact stolen, and that election was stolen. So, Mark Levin, we're not for using our military to be fighting for every battlefront that you might have in mind for the military to be fighting on, because you have seen how great the military is. And you showed last night your Zionist intent. And you're going to have to be called on the carpet for it. And the person that are in fact mobilizing around the things you're talking about, they're going to have to be stopped. Okay. That's what I came to the studio to say. We'll see you next week. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.